leaking what they really had gone through in the jesters, I faxed a summary of my evidence down to the National Shrine headquarters in Tampa, Florida, and I also faxed a similar summary to the jesters headquarters outside Indianapolis, Indiana. And within about 7 to 10 days, I had lost two of my best sources of income because the jesters retaliated against me and destroyed those sources of income, and that lasted for a year. And then somebody, which I have to believe is the jesters through the law firm and the jesters here in Minnesota, where two of the jesters are members of and named partners in the law firm, started surveilling all the meetings I was having with attorneys to try to figure out how to combat the jester human trafficking.
Wow.
And people would come and hold cameras up, interfere with meetings, tape record stuff, follow me around with the cars. Several times people held their hand out like a gun and then pulled the trigger at me. I had car troubles that I didn't have before. It's been pretty bad. And I actually filed a formal police report with the St. Paul Police to document certain days where these things were happening. And then the lawsuit you're asking about, I ended up filing my own federal RICO lawsuit against these guys on February 6th of this year in the United States District Court in Minnesota. And that's now proceeding into pretrial procedures, some discovery. I'm going to get some discovery. And I'm running into some very unusual things in that case right now.
Why do you think that the jesters and the Shriners have been able to get away with what they've gotten away with without raising any of the red flags that any other organization, including Wall Street, would raise?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that, and I appreciate your question on that especially. First of all, I believe that when the jesters were founded, if you think back to 1911, 1917, that era, women and children were not legally persons, were they, Rob?
No.
So if you were going to traffic in women, who could complain? I mean, there was a very small number of anti-trafficking laws, but they were hardly ever enforced. So the first thing is when the jesters got founded, and there turns out the FBI says their sole purpose is human trafficking. They never had a charitable purpose of any kind. So the first thing is they had picked victims who couldn't fight back. There was no real law enforcement that could fight on behalf of the victims. There were very few, if any, anti-trafficking organizations. And I think equally important, as you have learned and are putting up on your excellent websites, the jesters managed to control or fill in very powerful positions in our society: lawyers, judges, doctors, accountants, very successful business people. And pretty much, if you think about state court events or events inside of a state as opposed to the federal government, they probably could work their will in most any situation. And I think that's been the secret, that given their victims had nobody to fight for them, they were powerless for so many years, and now they got themselves and picked men who had these powerful positions, and that pretty much has been able to squelch most of the criticism or the prosecutions or whatever you think of it. They just never get off the ground.
So if we're looking at a system that seems to be, I don't want to use, well, yeah, I'll say it, corrupt when it comes to members of the Shriners or the jesters, how do you expect to get true justice?
Well, you asked, and we talked about that a little last time too. I myself, in spite of some experiences in my own life where I was not treated favorably by people in power, I have never been bitter about those things, and I've had great faith that eventually justice will win out. The truth will come out. You can't hide all these things forever. And I'm especially hopeful with the jester situation because given, as you know, one of the gentlemen who pled guilty out in Buffalo was a New York State Supreme Court judge. Right. And another one was his confidential law clerk, and the last two were sheriff's deputies. What that tells me is those were federal prosecutions, Rob. And if the jesters couldn't shut those federal prosecutions down, they may not be able to shut down other prosecutions around the country. But that really isn't my real big hope right now. Even though the FBI has got human trafficking as their sixth, last time I looked at their website, opposing human trafficking was the sixth highest FBI priority. First four were anti-terrorism, and number 5 was public corruption, which actually fits right in with the jesters here.
Right.
But what I think is really changing is, even though, as I shared with you and the listeners, a lot of the younger people I'm talking to and interacting with, they never heard of the Shriners. Their parents never took them to the shrine circuses. They never saw it. They're too young to have remembered these things. Mm-hmm. But to a person, they are incensed about human trafficking, which is modern-day slavery. They are against that. I mean, they would, if there was something they could do today, they would do it. So what I'm going to try to do, which is kind of brainstorming a little bit here, I'm going to try to figure out a different way to put pressure on the jesters. Because I don't think, well, as you know, if there's 24,000 active members who pretty much have been human trafficking every month mm-hmm. in recent memory, I don't know how the FBI could even prosecute 24,000 people. I mean, that's bigger than any mafia. I've never heard of a mafia group with 24,000 active members. Maybe there are such, but I don't know. You know, so I'm going to try to figure out a way to put pressure on the jesters to turn themselves in, to self-surrender, to get attorneys, to give the names of their victims mm-hmm. to people in law enforcement. And I'm going to try to see if I'm not ready for it today, but I'm going to try to do a music video, put it out on YouTube, asking and try to get, as you know, don't you, that the Super Bowl people have anti-trafficking now every year in the whole city. They had a big anti-trafficking campaign down in Indianapolis for the last Super Bowl. And I'm going to try to tap into some of these people who are clearly against human trafficking and see if we can, instead of saying law enforcement has to do all this, I'm going to say, look, the world has changed for the jesters. Out in Buffalo, all four men ratted out each other and a number of other jesters from around the country. Do you want to be next, or do you want to take the lead and get a better plea agreement? That's the theory right. I'm going to try to come out with, and I'm going to try to use that in my own civil case here in Minnesota. If these guys can't testify and they have to take the Fifth Amendment, they better lawyer up and get themselves a good plea agreement around.
So what is it that you'd like to see happen with the jesters?
I'd like to see them disband within a year, shut totally down. I'd like to see the jester officials who are now publicly known here in Minnesota. I know the names of 19 or 20 of them, and they're the same people who control the shrine, and they're all successful business people, Ron. I'd like to see them resign from the shrine and publicly apologize to their spouses and to the other Shriners. And then I'd like to see them go lawyer up and see if their lawyer would say, hey, let's go try to get a plea agreement, but to get it, you're going to have to turn in the names of a bunch of the victims so they can get help. So those are some of the things that I'm percolating with to try to figure out how to make this, put the pressure on the jesters to turn themselves in. I don't think we want to waste all our FBI or Royal Canadian Mounted Police law enforcement time chasing a bunch of jesters who are pretty much, they've convicted themselves, Rob.
Right.
There's not much left to do with them. So you know, hey, as I studied what happened in Buffalo, every single one of those men who was implicated not only ended up taking the guilty plea, they ratted out each other.
All right,
they ratted out other jesters from around the country.
Mike, we've got to take our news break. Please stand by. X-Zone Nation, Mike Blodgett is our guest. www.taughtintrilogy.com. Mike and I will be back on the other side of this news break talking about the Royal Order of Jesters. Don't go away. My name is Rob McConnell, and I would like to tell you about a very special lady that I have the pleasure of knowing, and that's Miss Sylvia Anthony. Sylvia Anthony believes the golden years are a time to gear up and get busy, not relax and take it easy. She has faced many hardships in her 84 years, but they have made her stronger and more determined. As founder and president of Sylvia's Haven, a shelter for women and their children near Boston, Sylvia has helped transform over 1,086 lives in the past 27 years, not only with housing, but also providing direction as to where they can go to develop the earning skills they want and need to live free from difficult domestic situations. Sylvia's Haven is everything to Sylvia Anthony, even calling it her magnificent obsession. Women who qualify for the program at Sylvia's Haven receive assistance via guidance counselors to find the appropriate job opportunity. Women and their children may remain at the housing for up to 2 years. At the end of this time, or sooner, a woman who is successfully employed and has an apartment or home may leave Sylvia's Haven to begin a new and independent life. Now this is where you come in to help make Sylvia's dream into a reality. Sylvia's dream is to have a Sylvia's Haven in every state to help as many women and their children as she can, and to help this dream come true. A crowdfunding site has been established which can be accessed at www.sylviasdream.org. Now that's www.sylviasdream.org. With your financial help and support, Sylvia Anthony will continue to help those in their time of need, not only in the Boston area, but with her dream of having a Sylvia's Haven in every state of the United States. Your help is needed to make Sylvia's dream come true. Please visit and give at www.sylviasdream.org. Once again, www.sylviasdream.org. And remember, the only difference between a dream and reality is just doing it. We need your help to make Sylvia's dream come true. Visit www.sylviasdream.org. Once again, www.sylviasdream.org. For the X Zone Radio TV show and the X Chronicles newspaper, I am Rob McConnell. You're listening to the X Zone Radio Show, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, and Star Cable. Our toll-free telephone number worldwide is 1-800-610-7035. Our email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Bring it home, baby, make it so. 1-800-610-7035, worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Don't forget, X Zone Nation, the X Zone Book Club launches on Friday, August the 17th. You'll be able to see some of the best books by some of the best authors at the best prices at www.xzonebookclub.com. My special guest this hour is Mike Blodgett. We're talking about the Shriners Human Trafficking Connection. Mike's website is www.taughtintrilogy.com. That's www.taughtintrilogy.com. So, getting back to the jesters, if they're that powerful, is there any way that they can squirm their way out of this mess?
Well, that's the question. Did you? When I was growing up outside Chicago, there was a game that we were never supposed to play when we first got to drive cars, and it was called Chicken. And you drove as fast as you could at the other car to see who was going to chicken out and swerve away.
Right.
I think, Rob, I don't recommend that game to anybody. Never try it at home. Lord help us how we survived. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I think is, I think the world has caught up to the jesters now. Now, I certainly could be wrong. You know, I'm not the favorite person of a lot of law enforcement people, but I do get along with a number of other ones.
But why aren't you? You know, like what you're doing is just bringing something to light that seems to be a preferred dirty little secret. So why wouldn't you be regarded, anything else but as a good guy in this case?
Well, however that, and I agree with you on that, but I don't want to interfere with law enforcement, I guess is what I'm trying to say, too. I have no idea what they're doing. They may be working on a worldwide prosecutions, national, North America, whatever. Mm-hmm. But here's where the rubber meets the road. We learned who the jesters' identities were here in Minnesota approximately 2 years ago.
Right.
We turned in the sworn FBI evidence and the sworn evidence that they put themselves on their own membership list, Rob, that they put themselves on their tax returns deducting human trafficking expenses as 501c3 charities, and the local district court judge, Marilyn Brown Rosenbaum, who was previously a civil rights lawyer before she got into